Hey guys, Ayush here. Welcome to the Blue Biker. A few days ago, I uploaded a video where I spoke about riding skills that can help you ride in the rain. And before that, I uploaded another video which is about staying dry in the rain and your mindset regarding it. I'll leave the link to both the videos in the description. This is the part 3. This one is going to be about how to maintain your motorcycle and make sure it is ready for the rains. It's going to be slightly long and there are a lot of things that I want to cover, so stay tuned till the end. The basics are pretty simple and straightforward. By the end, you'll see how easy it is to maintain your motorcycle when it's raining outside. So, without further ado, let's get started. When it comes to riding in the rains, the one thing that is the most important on your bike, actually, there are two things that are super important. One of them are the tires. The tires are your contact patch to the ground, and if they are bad, there's a high chance that you'll lose traction and crash, and that's not something you want. Remember, in the rains, the traction is already less, so you have to try your best to make sure you maintain any kind of traction you can. How do you do that? It's by making sure your tires are good and they are properly filled. There are a few ways that you can check if your tires are good or not. One is to check the TWI or tire wear indicator. It's on the tread. If the TWI is on the same level as the tire, then your tires are old and they should be replaced. The next thing you should check is the shape of the tire. Now, looking from the back or front of the tire should be completely round. However, if you are someone who likes to ride in a straight line for a long time, tourers, especially tourers who just cover a lot of distance on the highway, the tires tend to develop a flat spot. Basically, where the tire is touching the ground, that spot will become flat and it will start squaring up a bit, like I'm showing you in this photo over here. This cupping is bad for two reasons. One, you won't have good handling on your bike. You will always feel like your bike does not want to turn in, and when it's leaned over, it does not want to get up. The second reason is that the flat spots will not be able to remove water, so that your tire will not hold that much traction when it's wet outside. That is why if your tires are cupped, now is a good time to change them. And don't be one of those people who is like, oh yeah, I'll change the tires after the monsoon. I have never understood that logic, but I've seen some people follow it. Don't be that guy. Just get new tires right now. This is when you need your tires to be in the absolute best shape they can be. Finally, you need to check for cracks on the tires. This happens when the tires are too old and they have hardened off and they start cracking, and a couple of cracks here and there is not a big deal. But if you find spots of cracks everywhere, your tires are too old and you need to change them. Like I said, your tires are hard, so they won't have a lot of traction. If these three things check out, you then have to make sure that you put enough air in the tire. For most bikes, always follow the manufacturer's recommendations, which is somewhere around 28 and 29 in the front or 32, 33 in the back. If you're someone like me who likes a bit of a stiff suspension and stiff feeling motorcycle, you can bump it up to 2 or 3 psi max, not more than that. For example, on my KTM 390 Adventure, most times I'm running 34 at the back and 29 or 30 at the front. But if you feel like your tires don't have a lot of traction in the rain, you can bump down the psi by a couple of points. So if your tire is running 32, you can put it down to 31 or 30. It's a small difference. You will not feel it in your riding that much, but don't go beyond 4 or 5 points. Always remember, you don't want to go away from the manufacturer's recommendations, because the lower the pressure in your tire, there is a higher risk of your rims getting bent or the tire being damaged. And I think that's about it when it comes to tires. Just make sure that your tires are in good shape and properly filled with air. If you take care of that, most of your traction worries will be gone. And let me tell you, no matter how cheap your tires are, like I'm running MRFs on my bike, which I think are not good for me because they don't give me a lot of feedback. Still, the tires have a lot of grip. Always trust in your tires. The manufacturers have done a lot of research before choosing a particular set of tire. So for most bikers, in most bikes, most modern bikes, you won't have to worry about traction at all when it comes to tires. The tires are more than good enough. After the tires, we get to the second most important part of your motorcycle, which are the brakes. If you don't have brakes, you won't be stopping in time. You need to make sure your brakes are really good, and they should be. This is something that is not at all optional. The tires and brakes are never optional. To check your brakes, it's very easy. If there's a brake pad, just see the brake pad and make sure that this part, the main pad material, is there. There's enough of it. You can check it. You don't have to remove the caliper or anything. Just look at the brake from the front or the back, and maybe you will have to use a torch. Once you look at it, you will get a view of how much pad is remaining on your brake pads. That is one. If the brake pads look really worn out, it's time to change them. I would recommend using sintered brake pads. They work brilliantly well and they give you a lot of feedback and confidence. Now is also a good time to rebleed your entire system. Use .4 or .5.1 right now. Avoid using .3 because it's not really that good for Indian conditions. It's a hot country you live in right now. doing these two things, making sure the brake pads are good and rebleeding the system should be more than enough. But you can go a step further and get yourself a brake cleaner. This is very important. I'll leave a link to this in the description if I can find it on Amazon. This will help you clean your brakes properly. Ideally, once every month, you should remove the calipers, spray this around with it, and then use a brush to clean the calipers properly. But if you don't have a lot of time, I would recommend every 1 or 2 weeks, especially if your bike is very dirty. Just spray this down on the entire braking system and the brake should be clean enough for riding. Remember that you only use brake cleaners on the brake, WD-40, chain cleaner, or whatever else kind of cans you will find in a shop. They won't work for brakes. You need specifically a brake cleaner for cleaning the brakes. Sometimes you have good pads, you have bled the system and the brakes are clean, but you will still feel like your brakes are wooden. They are not giving the same level of feedback or performance. In that case, you should check the slider pin. A slider pin is something that holds the brake pad in place, so it basically just slides through this hole over here. The slider pin sometimes gets rusty in the rains, and I'm pretty sure most of the mechanics that service our bikes don't know how to grease it, or they just don't grease it ever. So you need to just take out the pin. It's very easy. You have to remove a couple of clips and it comes right out. Grease it properly. You can use this. This is a Maxwell caliper grease. If you can't find this, and also this is kind of expensive, but if you can't find this, then you can go for silicone grease or copper-based grease. Do not go for petroleum-based grease. I'll get into lubrication in a bit. Use a dab of this, apply it on the slider pin and put it back inside and lock it in place. Just make sure you don't over-grease it because if the grease drips down on the brake pad, that's bad. You won't be stopping. I think that's about brakes. Then we move on to another important part of the bike, which is sometimes annoying but very important to do, and you may already be doing it, you may already know it, which is cleaning and lubing up the chain. For that you need these two, not this. This is for lubing up your brain, this is for lubing up your chain. This is a chain cleaner that you'll use to clean the chain. Ideally you should do it once a week, but I like to do it every 600-700 kilometers. It's completely fine. So clean the chain properly, spray this down and then use a chain cleaning brush to just scrub everything off. If you don't want to use this chain cleaner, because let's be honest, it's kind of expensive and gets over really fast, especially in our conditions, you can go for kerosene. Don't apply WD-40 or diesel or anything on the chain. You can use kerosene. Kerosene is completely fine on the chain. With the chain cleaner out of the way, once you have cleaned the chain, next thing you need to lube the chain. For this, you don't have a lot of alternatives. You can either use a chain lube or you can use gear oil. Gear oil is very thick, but it does kind of fling around a bit and it will make your bike dirty. It will also make your pants dirty if you don't have a proper chain guard or chain cover, whatever it is called. So chain lube, and whichever chain lube you use, just make sure it is a good quality chain lube. Don't go for cheap ones. Like I got this dry lube and it sucks. It goes dry in 2 days or 200 kilometers. But this has been good so far. This is Roll-On. It's the same guys that make the chain on a lot of bikes. Like I think my KTM also uses a Roll-On chain, and this is their own product. I got this from IBW, but I'm sure you will find it online. I'll also leave a link to a couple of good chain loops in the description. Spray down your chain anytime it looks dry. You don't want your chain to be dry because that is how it will develop rust spots. And rust spots by itself are not that bad and they are not that big of a deal because they are easy to get off, but you just don't want your chain to be rusty for a long time. If it's showing a bit of rust, clean it up immediately and spray some lube on it to make sure that it does not develop more rust in future. Yeah, you don't want your chain to get rust, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying if you see a bit of rust during the monsoons, it will come out easily. Just clean it up and lube it again. Then we come to lubrication in general, because in monsoons you need to lube up your entire bike, not just the chain, and there are a few things that you need to keep in mind. For example, if it's moving, it should be lubed. Anything on your motorcycle, if it's moving, it should be lubed, but you have to use specific type of lube for it. You can't just spray WD-40 everywhere. This is my best friend. I love WD-40. This is a pesticide for me also at home. Like I go after insects with this thing and it works. But on your motorcycle, this will not work everywhere. Ideally, where I like to use it is just on the switch cube or some electricals where it has started developing some rust spots or it's gotten dirty. You use this. Just remember, this is not a lube, this is a solvent. So it will destroy rubber and plastic. You don't want to spray this on any kind of rubber or plastic. Spray it on the switch cube to make sure that the switches don't go bad, because sometimes they do. You'll find that sometimes after sitting in the rain, your turning indicator or headlight switch or whatever kind of switch it is, some of them might not work. It's not because they've gone bad, it's just because they've developed a bit of rust on them. spray this, and then just like press the switch a couple of times and you should be good to go. 90% of the time, this fixes it. On other parts of your motorcycle, you should be using something like this. This is a multi-purpose silicone spray. Like I said, petroleum-based grease or solvents like WD-40 do not go well with rubber and plastic, so you need something that is not made with petroleum at all. That is why you should use silicone spray or a metal-based grease or spray, whatever you can find. Those work perfectly fine and they are safe for rubber parts and plastic. Although I'm not sure about all the metal grease, I have never used them because I just cannot find them at all. This spray you can use on a lot of things on your motorcycle. For example, all the levers, the brake pedals, the foot pegs, basically anything that moves should have this on it. One thing I like about silicone spray is that it does not drip and it does not collect a lot of dust. Apart from this, there is also one more thing, very important thing, that you need to lube on your motorcycle. But for most of us, that job is very difficult and technical and it will take a lot of time. I would recommend you take your bike to the mechanic and ask them to check the steering head bearing and make sure it is greased properly. Many times, if you wash your bike frequently or it's left out in the rain, the grease on the steering heads can wash away and the bearings will get dry and they'll get destroyed. This will affect the handling of your motorcycle. So make sure the steering head bearings are also greased properly. Keyholes are another thing that you need to lube properly. For this, the best thing you can use is a pencil. Dude, hear me out. I know what you're thinking. Hear me out. Pencil has this lead, which is not actually lead. It used to be lead before, that is why we call it lead still, but this is graphite. What you need to do is, if you take a pencil and then use a blade to rub some of it over here like this, like rubbing the tip, like this. Do it for 15 seconds and you'll notice some of the graphite dust falling down. That dust is a really good lubricant. Graphite is one of the best dry lubricants ever. And what you have to do is basically open up the keyhole. You prop it open. You can just slide a toothpick or something inside to make sure it does not close up. Then take the blade, take the pencil and start scraping it away for 15 seconds. Once there is enough of that graphite dust in the keyhole, take your key, put it inside, take it out, put it inside, take it out, put it inside, take it out, put it inside, take it out. Do it for like 10 times and then turn it around and your keyholes are greased. That's it when it comes to greasing. Now most of the basics are already covered. Last thing is to make sure that your bike stays warm and cozy. So make sure that your bike is warm. The reason I say this is because you don't want your bike to get too cool. This will drain the battery and it will do some natak when you try to cold start it. It happens if I park my bike for a week, it will take some time to start properly. If you have covered parking, by all means use the covered parking. But if you don't have a covered parking, don't worry about it. If you have to leave your bike out in the open, exposed to the rain, it's completely fine. It will just take a bit of effort to get cold started after not riding it for a week or so. But for the most part, bikes are completely safe from the rain. Remember, the manufacturer has tested it a lot. Like they test the test mules for lakhs of kilometers before they sell it to you. And they know there are many customers like us who don't have a covered parking. I also don't have a covered parking. I just leave my bike out in the open. It's completely fine. The only thing that happens is some of the bolts start rusting and then you can just use WD-40 on the bolts. Unless you have an old motorcycle, especially an old Royal Enfield, they are notorious for having leaky tanks. So the water will go inside the tank and that will just, it's a mess. Your entire tank will rust and you will have to change the tank. If you have a bike that has a tendency to leak water into the tank, you should consider covering it. Leaving out in the open, then it will just collect water inside. So how do you do that? Well, you can put a tarp on it or you can put a cover on it. Just remember, if you put a cover on it, it will be the perfect place for rats and cats. They will chew up the wires. And the wiring system is expensive. Trust me, you don't want wiring problems on your bike. Then I would say clean the bike regularly, especially after you go for a long ride. If you ride in bad conditions, or if you go off-roading, you will notice the bike will gather a lot of mud on itself, especially on the swing arms and the engine's front side. It will have cakes of mud developing over there. Don't let that dry out because the moment it dries out, it will be difficult to remove. You can remove it with pressure washer, but it is difficult to remove and it can start corrosion on the part wherever it is. So make sure you keep the bike relatively clean. You don't have to wash it every time. I am a firm believer in not washing the bike. I wash my bike maybe twice or thrice a year. So far, I've owned my bike for almost a year now, like 8 or 10 months, and I've only washed it thrice. I would rather eat a spark plug than wash my bike. because I feel like bikes should be dirty, especially adventure bikes. It gives them character. This is also a good time to service your bike. Servicing the bike will make sure everything else is also running perfectly fine, so you can go out and enjoy the rains without having to worry too much. That's it for this video. Do these things and you won't have to worry about rains ruining your bike. I would like to close this video by saying, take it easy, man. Don't worry so much about your motorcycle. It's made for that. It's made to be sitting out in the rain and in the sun and whatever else there is. Just maintain it properly, take care of it, and it will not go bad. It's good to care about your motorcycle. Definitely, I care about my motorcycle. That is why I'm making this video. You care about your motorcycle. That is why you are watching this video. But at the same time, if your bike is dirty, if your bike is sitting out in the rain for 2 days, it's completely fine. Nothing will happen to it. That's it for this video. Let me know in the comments what kind of videos you would like to see. What are some things you want me to cover next? I have a lot of plans. I'm trying to make 2 videos every week. So far, it's kind of going good. 60% of the time, it works every time. So let's see. I'll see you guys in a couple of days then. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Ayush Rathod. This is the Blue Biker. If you like the video, like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. Thank you so much. See you around. Cheers.